Good evening. Welcome, folks, to Collective 365's Grant Prep Workshop. So hopefully you are in this space because you either applied to our grant last year and want to know a little bit more, or you are new to our grants and you are looking for more information. So either way, we are happy to have you. Again, my name is Fatima, co-founder. I prefer my name, but if you need pronouns, she and her. And I am going to be sharing my screen for most of this. I welcome you to keep your cameras on or off, whatever feels comfortable. You can use the chat or you can unmute yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in just to be mindful of folks' time. So let me pull up the PowerPoint. And if at any time you can't hear me, please just let me know. Or if I'm going too fast, you can tell me to slow down as well. So I'm sharing my screen in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, if you can't see my screen, unmute yourself or type it in the chat. All right, so again, you're here because you are trying to apply or considering applying for our grant application. One of the things we want you to know is a little bit about the collective. So we started in 2020. We had a soft launch on Juneteenth, but our paperwork says July 2020. And it really just came out of this idea that there were so many dope Black and Brown people not only meeting, but exceeding the expectations and needs of their communities. So why weren't they getting support? And really it's because most of the funding sources are really connected to things that don't really align with the community. They were upholding or centering white supremacy. And so Collective 365 is trying to break the mold, and we use social justice philanthropy in order to do that. So we believe in transparency. We believe in Black and Brown people being decision makers and thought leaders in their community. So if you can describe a problem, you can describe a solution. You just need time, space, and resources. And Collective 365 is trying to provide that time, space, and resources. So how we get the money is we have members who pay, and then we have just general donations from community members. But we pull all of our money together to create a grant fund, and the grants committee, along with the voting membership, decides how that money is going to be dispersed. So I'll get more into the ranges and how things are broken down, but that's basically how we get the money. It's all about community. So we have some people that give $5. We have some people that have given $5,000 to us. So all money is welcomed, so long as it is with the understanding that you are giving money to celebrate and invest in Black and Brown people. The other thing about us is that philanthropy is for everyone. So it's not just money. We want people to know that they are valuable to the community, whether that's giving of their time, whether that's giving of their talent. And we want to make sure that there's space for everyone at the table. So we have 3 levels of membership. And one is general membership, which allows you to join if you have $0 to $49 annual contribution. Voting membership, you vote on how the grants are done, and that's $50 or more annually. And then board membership is a 3-year commitment, $100 per year. Any questions about the collective? So I already talked about kind of our why and what we are seeking to do and how it's a little bit different. Our biggest thing, well, not our biggest thing. One of the things that makes us most unique from other giving circles or grant funders is that we do give money to individuals. So if there's an individual in the community who's, trying to work on a project and they don't have a 501c3 or they're not an LLC or tied to one of those entities, we still believe that your work should be compensated and should be supported. So tonight we're going to talk about who can apply, how you apply, when the application is due, and kind of just like a timeline of events. We'll also talk about money, like how much money can you get? And then what happens once you have the grant? What does that process look like? And then we will open the floor up for questions. So how you can apply, who can apply, excuse me. Individuals, like I said, can apply. Groups could be, you might have a mom's group that are trying to address, food insecurity in their neighborhood. And so they're running a pantry out of one of the mom's basements. That could be something for somebody to apply to. Businesses is just what it means. You are an LLC, you have a business license, a nonprofit, meaning a 501c3 status. So if you are doing not-for-profit work, but you are not an 501c3, you would be considered a group and you're still eligible to apply. Please hear me when I say this. You must be serving primarily Black and Brown people. Again, you must be serving Black and Brown people. That is what we are here for. That's not to say that there might be a few non-Black and Brown folks that may benefit from your services, but when we say primarily, we're talking about 75% and or more. And it has to be in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Now, some of you may have a program that is based in Virginia, but also can apply to Maryland and DC, that's fine. Some of you may only be based in Maryland and only serve Maryland. That is okay. You do not have to serve all three. You just have to serve one of them. And you need to have a focus on one or more of these areas: health, education, workforce development, and or social justice. And you can define that for yourselves. Generally speaking, health, we're talking about physical, spiritual, emotional, like overall well-being, not just like physical health. It could also be mental health. Education is just that, doing something to help people further their education. So it doesn't have to be specifically like children. It could be older adults in their education. Things to help with workforce development. So providing jobs, helping prepare people to go into the workplace. And then social justice is kind of like a catch-all, addressing injustice that Black and Brown communities face. I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions. Don't see any in the chat. Okay. So the timeline for this cycle, it's a little different than last year's. What is the same is that the application launches February 1st and it will still close on March 1st. If you signed up on our website to receive updates about the grant, you will get a copy of the application / a link to access the application on February 1st. So you won't have to worry about remembering to go back and look. We will send you a link right to your inbox. Some of you, I will say, have signed up on our website, but your email was typed incorrectly, so it's bouncing back. So if you want to just double check, you can resubmit your email to ensure that you get that on time. So the grant application has a hard close date of March 1st at 11:59 p.m. That is Eastern Standard Time. So if you try to click the link on March 2nd or anytime after, the link will actually be disabled. Then once the application closes, the grants committee will then begin reviewing the applications. Last year, we got about 200 applications. We anticipate at least 200, if not more, this year. So we've pushed back the decisions, the preliminary decisions, to late March. So the preliminary decision basically is everyone, no matter what, will get a response from me that says, hey, thank you for submitting your application. Here is our decision. You will either be told you are being considered for the next round, or unfortunately, we're not able to consider you this year for the second round. But you will hear from us because we believe in transparency, and we also can appreciate that you all take time to write these applications, and you shouldn't be left in the dark until the final winner is announced. We want to make sure that we're keeping consistent and clear communication with you all. The semi-finalist informational / interviews, basically that is the grant committee's opportunity to ask you questions to help us make a decision about your application. So our application is relatively brief, and we do that on purpose because we don't want to make people spend 40 hours on an application. We think that the information that we are requesting is enough to help us make at least a preliminary decision, and then we do the interview via phone or Zoom to gather more information. We do not do site visits. That is something that is a little different than most grant funders. Usually they will say, well, we want to come and see what you're doing. We do not do that, not just because of COVID, but because we think that can be cumbersome. And also it's not equitable because, like I said, some people are individuals, so they don't necessarily have anything for us to come visit. So we do not make that part of our decision-making process. We'll do the interviews, and then the Collective 365 voting members will cast their votes, and then we will announce winners in late May. Funds are usually dispersed within like 2 weeks of that letter being sent to the winner or winners, because it's possible that it's more than one. Any questions about the timeline? Okay. So funding, some of you might be wondering, because I keep saying winner or winners. We may give one large grant, or we may give several grants in varying amounts. That's what we did last year. We gave out 7 grants, and they all varied in the amount. The beauty of Collective 365 is that we do not have it in our bylaws that we have to give one grant in X amount of dollars or no more than 2 grants in this amount. We kept it open because we wanted to be responsive to the community. So if we saw that there were a lot more people who were just kind of needing kind of seed money, it gave us the opportunity to make necessary adjustments. Someone asked a question in the chat, so I'm going to clarify. Sorry, but does feeding, clothing, and providing necessities to the homeless fall under your health category? You could make the argument for that, or you could also put it as a social justice issue. I hope that answers your question. And if not, you can type another question or unmute yourself. Any questions about the amount of funding? It's from $1,000 to $10,000. Next, how do I apply? So you need to submit an application. Coming to this workshop does not mean that you are applying. It does not give you any points for your application, in case people are wondering like, oh, will I be penalized if I didn't come to the workshop? Excuse me, the answer is no. We have 3 options for our application. You can submit a written application online, and I shouldn't say written, it really should say an electronic application through our website, which will take you to a Google form, and I'll show you that form momentarily. And then you can also submit a video. We give the option for video and phone interviews because we know some people are not great at articulating themselves in a written fashion. They are more visual storytellers. And so we want to give people flexibility and really set people up to succeed when submitting their application. So phone, we offer phone, not only because some people can't or aren't comfortable articulating themselves in written fashion, but sometimes people don't have good internet connection or they don't have a computer access. And so just trying to, again, think through different alternatives for folks. This question has come up and I want to address it now. We do not currently have our application in Spanish. Somebody has asked that. It is something that we would love to be able to offer in the future, but that is not something that we currently have. Not only do we not have it in Spanish, but our application is only in English, and our applications do need to be submitted / conducted in English. Any other questions about how to apply? Okay. So your written application, my suggestion for you, it's 3 simple steps: gather information, create a draft and edit, and then submit prior to the deadline. Our application questions will be available online. So you don't have to actually click the Google form and like pretend to go through it in order to see all the questions. We'll upload a PDF with all the questions. And I really encourage folks to sit down and think about what information they need to complete the application versus just clicking on the link and trying to do it in the moment, because you might miss things that really could be important to your application, or you might find yourself rushing because you didn't take the time to gather the information. It is a Google form, and technology is great until it's not. I encourage folks to use Microsoft Word or Google Docs or handwritten copy of your draft, so that if for some reason you're typing your answers and your computer, exits out of the application or it breaks down, we don't have a way of retrieving your entries. So I just want to warn folks that say, oh my gosh, I thought I hit submit and I exited out, but I didn't receive a confirmation. Can you retrieve my application? The answer is no. If you don't submit it, I don't have a way of retrieving it later. Please, which brings me to the next point about, unforeseen circumstances. We encourage you to submit prior to March 1st, but of course the absolute deadline is March 1st, but we cannot give extensions to anyone. So if you're like, my computer was eaten by my dog, unfortunately, you just will have to apply next year. Then the video application. 1 video, 1 applicant. So you submit 1 video that responds to all of our questions. So the same PDF that I referenced for the written application that tells you all the questions, I would encourage you to have those set of questions and think about how you are going to address that in video form. You don't have to address it in the order in which it's listed on the application, but all of those things need to be addressed in order for us to be able to fairly critique your application against a written application or a phone interview. One of the common mistakes of folks from last year's video applications were people were sending us kind of like promo videos instead of telling us what it was that their program did to help specifically improve Black and Brown communities, or that it specifically was for Virginia, or it hit Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So it might have been a cool video that told us about a program that they were doing, but it didn't address our other questions like how much funding do you need? Who's the point of contact? So if you are going to use a video from before, that's fine, but maybe you might need to add on to that video if it's not hitting all of the questions from our application. Um, Applicants should only include video content that they own to avoid any legal problems. So please don't use footage of people that you don't have consent for. Don't pull from other people's stuff, even if it's similar to yours. It should all be content that you are authorized to use. Timing is everything. Video submission should be no longer than 30 minutes. Any content beyond the 30 minutes will not be considered. So we really mean that. We will stop watching your video after 30 minutes. So if you, in 30 minutes, only address the first 5 questions, that's all that we're going to be able to review. And that's just in fairness. Last point or tip is lights, camera, action. Make sure you're using a suitable camera. You don't need to go out and buy a fancy high-tech camera unless you already have one. You literally can just use your phone, people. Like, the cameras on phones now are impeccable. So please do not go out and spend money. We do encourage you to pick a good location to record. Make sure that the background noise is to a minimum. You have optimal lighting. Your microphone is picking up. So maybe do a few test recordings to make sure that you're coming in clear. And make sure that you're contrasting with your background. So like if you're standing, like how I have a lavender background, maybe not wear a lavender shirt so that you're not becoming one with your background. We encourage folks to speak calmly and clearly, and be yourself. You don't need to, sit prim and proper and say, my name is such and such, and I'm here for it. We would love to see your personality. We recognize that the people that are doing the work are people. And so you don't need to, come on the camera with a suit and tie. If that's not how you all do your work, we want to see you in your authentic self. So just keep that in mind if you do opt for a video, that you don't need to go out and buy fancy equipment. You don't need to go out and buy a whole new wardrobe and get hair and makeup. Just, authentic, good content is what we're looking for. Any questions about written or video application at this time? All right, phone interview. 3 things: schedule a date and time. We will provide a link after February 1st with options for phone interviews. I will say phone interviews are limited because it's based on the availability of our grants committee to conduct those. So my suggestion for folks, if you are interested in a phone interview, is to schedule them as soon as the time slots come up. And we'll post on social media when those phone interview slots will become available. Prep before the call, and then location matters, similar to the first one. I do want to clarify, there was a bit of confusion with folks before. The phone interview is really for the person who can't do a written application or a video application. Because a phone interview is literally just a committee member asking you the questions and they're transcribing what you say. So it doesn't give you bonus points. Like some people thought, oh, I submitted a written application. Now I'm going to talk to you on the phone to explain my application. It's either one or the other, not both. So I just want to make sure that folks are understanding a phone interview is for somebody who's like, I can't do a written application and I can't do a video application. Phone is the only way that I'm going to be able to submit an application. So the grants committee will have select times and dates available. The interview is only 30 minutes, just like the video. We have timed this in the past. You only need 30 minutes for the interview. And so just prepare for that. Sometimes folks are like, oh, can I have 3 people sit in on the call? Because they all do different things. And I want to make sure that, we're getting all the information across. There's nothing wrong with having multiple people on the phone interview, with the exception of if you are not prepared. So if your grant interviewer asks one question and you have one person on your team that's going on a 10-minute tangent, and we don't get through all of the questions, that's just something to keep in mind. So if you are going to do a phone interview and or do it with multiple people, I really encourage you to prepare in advance kind of what it is that you want to like get across, so that you are being clear and concise. Again, location matters. Keep the background noise to a minimum, just because if they can't hear you responding, that impacts what they're able to type in for your application submission. We encourage folks to use headphones just because it helps, but it's not required. You want to mute your notifications on the phone, so that like buzzing, binging sound, maybe put your phone on like do not disturb. Sit in a comfortable environment, like in a nice comfy chair. You might even lay in a bed if that's better for you, but just make sure you're in a comfortable position to answer the questions. I see something in the chat. Are the questions provided beforehand for the phone interview? The questions are the same. So the questions for the phone interview are literally the same questions that are on the written, and those will be found on our website after February 1st. It'll be a PDF. So everyone after February 1st will have access to our application questions without actually clicking on the Google form. It'll just be in a PDF form. It'll have all of the questions. And that's what we'll be using in that order to conduct your interview. Did that answer your question? Awesome. So next, by coming to this workshop, you get to see the application and the questions. Don't worry, you don't need to like take screenshots. Like I said, the application is going to be, the questions will be available on February 1st. And this recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and a link will be on our website. So you can do screen grabs, but it's not necessary because, like I said, this information will be made available to you. So the first part of the application will look like this, except it'll be a full Google form, but I just did screenshots. You will not need to have a Gmail account to complete this application. I repeat, you do not need a Gmail account to complete this application. The first question is going to be your organization name or your individual name. So if you're applying as an individual, meaning like Fatima wants $10,000, here I would write Fatima M. Smith. But if Fatima works at Birth and Color RVA, I'm just naming a nonprofit that I know, and I'm applying on behalf of Birth and Color RVA, I would put Birth and Color RVA. I wouldn't put my individual name. Then the next question is, tell us about your organization or initiative, including who you serve, how you serve them. Feel free to include data or context about the community you serve and or the needs you address if you think it will be helpful for the collective. I'll give an example of this. Let's say I am a mother, like I said earlier, I'm a part of a group of mothers who has a food pantry in our basement, and we're feeding like the neighborhood kids. So I would explain how we got started. It was 3 moms. We were drinking wine one day and realized that our kids kept talking about how their friends didn't have proper lunch at school. And so we decided to do something about it. We realized after talking to the teachers at our kids' schools that, 1 in 5 students was receiving free lunch and yada, yada, yada. So that's like the data and the context. And so who we serve only kids, K through 12 who live in this particular school district, or maybe it's only kids that attend this particular elementary school. So you would say that. And then how do you serve them? You could say, you know, every Friday we open the pantry from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. and let folks just show their school ID to go shopping in the pantry. Again, totally made up scenario, but just trying to help folks understand what we mean when we ask this particular question. Any questions about this question? Okay. Then for the contact name, if, like I said, if you're, say this group is called like, Mama Feeds, I don't know. I would put Fatima M. Smith as the point of contact for the application. That does not mean that Fatima M. Smith is the owner of Mama Feeds. It doesn't mean that I have, you know, decision-making power. It just means I'm the person that filled out this application who's going to be the point of contact moving forward. So if one of the grants members has a, grants committee members has a question, I can then go back to that person and communicate. I really encourage folks to not put like an intern's name, even if the intern is filling out the application, put a person who won't be possibly leaving or doesn't maybe isn't readily available to like check emails. So do think about that as far as point of contact, because that is the only person that we will contact. We won't contact anyone else outside of who's listed. Again, double check that you are typing the right email address. That goes back to the whole drafting it out beforehand so that you're more so just cutting and pasting. It minimizes you mistyping the email. We need a contact number. If you do not have a phone number and you only are using email, just put NA there. Same thing with website and social media handles. If you don't have that, that's okay, just put NA. But if you do have that, please type out the website and then the social media handles. I will say the new application, that's separated. So it'll be one slot for website, and then it'll be another slot for like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Again, if you don't have them, you just put NA or just put a period, just so we know, and you can move through the next. Please select which status best describes the applicant. Again, you need to decide if you're applying as an individual, a group, a nonprofit, or a business. Applicants may submit more than one proposal for different initiatives. So Fatima might want to apply as an individual for $10,000 to do X. But then Fatima also works for the YWCA of Richmond, and they want to apply for a grant. I may be tasked with completing the application for the Y. That is okay. So if you have different initiatives or you belong to different groups, that is not prohibitive, but you do have to submit separate ones. You can't put all of your ideas into one application. Any questions? All right. This question is specifically for people applying as an individual. We want to know what describes your identity. And it is a checkbox. So if you want to check more than one thing, that's fine. But we want to know how you primarily identify as, not necessarily your entire, you know, ancestry.com lineage, just on when somebody meets you, like, are you introducing yourself as a Black person, or are you saying, you know, I'm Afro-Latina? Like, we want to know how you're introducing yourself. Then if you are applying as an organization, group, or business, we want to know what percentage of your staff identifies as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. That is important to us because oftentimes we have folks who are like, oh, our staff is Black. We serve primarily Black people, but like all of our leadership is white. That's problematic for us. We want to support organizations and businesses that recognize that Black and brown people can be in positions of power. So please just make sure you have that data. And again, that's why this information will be available in a PDF form so that you can kind of think through what that looks like. Then we want to know your boards. So just because you are a group or a business, you may not have a board. But if you do have a board, please let us know kind of what is your board makeup. And again, if it doesn't apply, you just put this question does not apply. Next is, what recent accomplishments is your organization / it should say you are most proud of? If helpful, share a brief story that illustrates your impact in the community over the past 1 to 2 years. If you're applying as an individual or group, again, you would talk about what you've done within the last 1 or 2 years. It's okay if you're an individual or a group or even an organization, and maybe the last year you've just been like, look, we're just trying to survive because it's COVID. And the thing that we're proposing really hasn't been done. So we can't talk about the accomplishments of that particular program. That's okay. You can make reference to other things that you're doing. We basically just want to see your connection to the community. This is our way of like vetting folks who are just maybe like, oh yeah, like I think this is an issue. And it's like, who have you been talking to? What work have you been doing? Like, we want to know what you're doing and why you're proud of it. It just helps us get a sense of like what you see as success. The second part of the grant application, I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions of the first part. You can unmute yourself or type in the chat. All right. So second part, want to tell me the program or project name. So like I said, you're an individual and you are like, oh, I give free haircuts to, the students at these 3 elementary schools in Baltimore, right? Just come up with a name for that. It could just be like Baltimore Cuts. I don't know. Just have a name for it. Then the question is, which area does your proposal target? Note, your proposal does not have to provide services to the entire state or district. However, it must provide services to a location within one of these states / the district. So again, we really want you to tell us, is it Virginia, Maryland, DC, a combination of those, all of them? Then please elaborate on your criteria for individuals accessing your services or programs. So how do you determine, and I kind of talked about this in another question from part 1, but this is the question where we really want you to go into the details of this. So like, is it, people that go to this elementary school that make their parents have a certain income that allows them to receive the free haircut? Is it only a certain gender that can receive the haircuts? Is it only done a certain time of year? We just want to know the criteria. If this is a new program or service, please explain how you anticipate determining who's eligible. So we want to know, like, is it going to be open to any kid and you're just hoping that you might get primarily Black and brown people? Or are you specifically like, no, I am going to this neighborhood because there is a 80% population of Black and Latina youth or adults or elderly individuals. Sorry, I'm not supposed to say elderly, older adults. And so, yeah, just make sure you go into detail on like how people are going to be able to access your services. Also, we want to know things like, do they have to complete an application? You don't have to attach the application, but like that's something we want to know. Or is it just a matter of word of mouth? Like I can just walk up and say, hey, I need a haircut and you give it to me. Also, is there a reason why somebody would be denied? You know, if that's an easier way to help you answer that question. Please share how your proposal will benefit communities of color. Please share how the funding will be utilized. For example, $500 is going to be needed for school supply. Well, not, don't say school supplies, but specify the supplies for Post-it notes, markers, and poster board. And then 2,500 is going to be to pay a facilitator to do the art activity. We want a breakdown of how you anticipate spending the money. Last year, some people missed out because they were just not telling us how they were going to spend the money. They were just like, this benefits Black people because traditionally they don't have access to, you know, tissue. And they weren't saying how they were going to use the money to make sure that Black people now had tissue. So we really want a great example of an answer would be this program provides Black and brown pregnant individuals with support during pregnancy to minimize their to optimize their maternal health rates. And we do this by paying doulas $1,000 stipend. We're gonna contract 5 doulas and pay them $5,000, and we'll be able to serve 5 families. And we need $2,000 for transportation expenses. Question: if we are in the process of starting a new program, are we able to apply twice, one for each program or project? Yes, you can apply for multiple programs / projects. They just have to be in separate applications. So if you are doing something with doulas, right? And then also you have another project where you have a food pantry, right? Do not put them in the same application. We will not be able to evaluate that application. It would need to be one application submitted for doulas, a separate application, all new information typed in for like your food pantry. Would you all prefer our budget outline for this question, like a line by line breakdown? No, you don't necessarily need a line by line, but we do just, let me just give another example. We had people last year that were just like, we just want the $10,000, but they weren't telling us what it would be used for. And so we just want to get a sense of, you need $10,000, not just because it sounds like, oh, if that's the max, that's what I want. But we just want to ensure that people are actually going to like use like they've thought about what the money is going to be used for. So even if the stuff may cost a little less, maybe cost a little bit more, we just want to know that people have really taken this seriously, to say like, no, I really plan to spend this money. And it's as simple as just like, you know, Googling like, how much does like a pack of 20 pencils cost? So like if you were saying that you're only working with 5 kids for 2 months, you shouldn't need $1,000 in color pencils. Just saying, like you might need $1,000 for color pencils and some other things, but just making sure that you're showing us that you're actually being thoughtful about the project and making sure that you know what the community needs for this to be successful for them. Did that help with the question about the line item? It doesn't have to be, every little cent, but don't just write $1,000 for supplies. Like, what are the supplies? Did that answer your question? Okay, perfect. Then the next question, can the funds be used for overhead costs like salary, utilities, and rent? Yes, I gave the example earlier about like a stipend for doulas. So yes, you can certainly pay people with that. Like, we had somebody last year say that they needed, $10,000, and 7,500 of that 10,000 was to pay 2 people to run a grief circle, right? So yeah, you definitely can use that for salary. You can use that for facility. Like, we gave money to someone last year who wanted to redo a baseball field in an inner city community. So like, yeah, our funding is unrestricted, and that you just need to tell us what you're doing. So we're pretty open, people. We just want you to give us the information. So we're not trying to tell you what you can't use it for. We just want you to tell us what you are going to use it for. Like, we don't want it to be like a secret of like, I just randomly want $5,000 to like solve a problem, but I don't really know how I'm going to use that $10,000, right? Okay, I'm glad that answered your question. Then we have this, which is the maximum grant amount is 10,000. Can your proposal be completed with 10,000? Some of you, the answer is no, and that's okay. I repeat, some of you need more than $10,000 to do your project. That is okay. Please do not think that if you mark no, I need more, that we will not give it to you. We just ask that because we want to see how, like, okay, maybe if we give this person 10,000, if they really only need 15,000, what's the likelihood that our 10,000 could help them get to the 15? You know what I'm saying? So we're not using it to hurt you. We're using it to help in our decision-making process. So you would either check, this proposal does not require more than 10,000. This proposal requires 10,000 and we've already secured the additional funding, or it requires more than 10,000 and we are not sure how we're going to get the remaining money. Next question, how much grant funding are you requesting? Please, y'all, make sure your numbers add up. We had a few people who did a breakdown in the previous question, and when we went to add it up, it did not add up to what they requested. So they did the breakdown, and their breakdown might have added up to 5,600. But then on the line of what they were requesting, they put 10,000. So please just make sure that your math is adding up. And again, not just asking for money because you just know that you can, but really that you have a plan to use this money for the community in a very thoughtful way. Next question, if your proposal requires more than $10,000, please explain how you anticipate securing the remaining funding. If you do not need more than 10,000, just write NA. And it's okay if you don't have additional funding secure. You may use this space to explain how you may obtain it. So last year, some people wrote like, oh, we plan to do a auction, a virtual auction. Some people wrote, we just applied for 2 other grants and we're waiting to hear back from them. Some people were like, we're doing a fundraiser. You get the gist. Any questions so far? You can unmute yourself or type in the chat. All right, we're coming close to the end. The last question, people, is if you need additional support, we are here to help you. So although we can't give everyone $10,000, we do try to connect you with our members who have a plethora of skills. So we ask you to just, identify some areas. Some people checked all of these areas, but please know that we are following up with you at the end of the grant season, and we'll reach back out to you and say, hey, please identify your top your top 2 areas that you need support in. And then we'll try to match you with one of our members, and that member will either offer you free support around that area or at an extreme discount. So we had some members help people develop strategic plans. We had some people help with photography. We had other folks help with grant writing. So again, we're not just trying to write people checks and think that that solves everything. Money's great, but also like sharing of resources, sharing of time, that also can help with sustainability in our communities. So I just talked about that, and we are here for you. We are real people doing this work. These are some of our members on the screen. We are here to support you. Our contact is right there. collective365info@gmail.com. If you can give us, 24 to 48 hours, you will get a response from us. But we are just excited to see your applications and just really ready to like celebrate and hopefully invest in you. So that is the end of our prep workshop. I'm going to open the floor for questions. I'm actually going to stop the recording now. Okay. Anybody have questions?